Some good news to report today, great news actually. The Supreme Court of Nova Scotia declared yesterday that province's ban on Trinity Western University Law School grads is illegal. The 138-page court decision written by Justice Jamie Campbell couldn't be clearer. He made two main points. First of all, the Nova Scotia Barristers Society, that is the senior lawyers who make all the decisions for the legal profession there, they don't have the power to regulate Trinity Western University. It's none of their business. It's outside their power. But even if they did have that power, the judge said, they failed to respect the religious freedom of the students there, as guaranteed by the Charter of Rights. Let me quote a couple of passages from the ruling. They're a bit long, but I want you to hear them. Here's the first one. The Nova Scotia Barristers Society can only legally do what it has been given the power to do by legislation. It acts under the authority of the Legal Profession Act to regulate the practice of law in Nova Scotia. That act does not give the Barristers Society the power to require universities or law schools to change their policies. Its jurisdiction does not reach that far. The Barristers Society does have jurisdiction to deal with the educational and other qualifications of people who apply to practice law in Nova Scotia. If Trinity Western graduates were not prepared by virtue of their education to practice law in Nova Scotia, or were inclined by virtue of their training at that institution to be intolerant, refusing them admission would not be regulating the law school. It would be regulating the competence of Nova Scotia lawyers. Okay, do you see the difference? If this was a shoddy school, creating shoddy lawyers, that would be one thing. Or if the school taught bigotry and sent out baby lawyers to commit discrimination, well, that would be one thing. And in the fevered minds of some anti-Christian bigots, that dark fantasy might exist, but not in real life. Here's the judge again. The Federation of Canadian Law Societies decided to recognize Trinity Western law degrees as suitable to prepare graduates for legal practice. It was agreed here that graduates from Trinity Western's proposed law school would indeed be properly qualified. It was also agreed that they would be no more likely to discriminate than graduates of other law schools. So there's nothing wrong with Trinity Western law degrees or Trinity Western law graduates. Okay, so if everyone agrees that it's a good law school on the merits, and if the law students will be as good as any other law students, as lawyers, what's the deal? Well, you know the deal. They're Christians. That's the problem. Here, this is from the judgment again. There is, according to the Barristers Society, something wrong with Trinity Western. That something is its mandatory community covenant, which the Barristers Society discriminates against lesbians and gay students. Unless that community covenant is changed, a Trinity Western law degree is deemed not to be a law degree for the purposes of the Barristers Society. An otherwise qualified person would be deemed not qualified. The reason would not relate in any way to the law degree, to that person's ability or to his or her suitability to practice law. It would not be because of anything other than the university policy to which the Barristers Society objects. That is no different than deeming a law degree not to be a law degree unless the university amended any number of other policies that are not reflected in the quality of the graduate. Those could include tuition policies, harassment policies, affirmative action admission quota policies, or tenure policies. Exactly. I mean, the Law Society's elitist bullies don't like Christians. Yeah, we get that, guys. That is loud and clear, but that's just not a legitimate reason to regulate lawyers. I like this next part of the ruling. Let me read this to you, too. The legal authority of the Barristers Society cannot extend to a university because it is offended by those policies or considers those policies to contravene Nova Scotia law that in no way applies to it. The extent to which Barristers Society members or members of the community are outraged or suffer minority stress because of the law school's policies does not amount to a grant of jurisdiction over the university. Okay, I know I'm reading a lot of law to you here, but I want you to understand this decision and what it means and how it reveals the inherent bigotry of the law societies. I'll just quote one more passage. You can find the whole 138-page ruling online if you want to go deeper, but here, let me just read this one last part to you. The Nova Scotia Barristers Society has characterized Trinity Western's community covenant as unlawful discrimination. It is not unlawful. It may be offensive to many, but it is not unlawful. Trinity Western is not the government. Like churches and other private institutions, it does not have to comply with the equality provisions of the Charter. It has not been found to be in breach of any human rights legislation that applies to it. Counsel for the Barrister Society described Trinity Western's proposed law school as a rogue law school. It would be so only in the sense that its policies are not consistent with the preferred moral values of the Barrister Society Council, and doubtless many, if not a majority of Canadians. The charter is not a blueprint for moral conformity. Its purpose is to protect the citizen from the power of the state, not to enforce compliance by citizens or private institutions with the moral judgments of the state. I think that's great. I think this is an enormous, bracing, encouraging win for freedom of religion, freedom of association, and a pluralistic society. And it happened in part because of you, our Sun News viewers, and other Canadians who helped support one of the lawyers intervening in the case, John Carpe of the Justice Centre for Constitutional Freedoms. You'll remember that we have raised money to help cover his costs for various fights, including this lawsuit. This is a victory for freedom, for Canada, for Trinity Western, but it's also your victory too. You helped. I'm so happy for this success. In a way, I shouldn't be surprised. I mean, in 2001, the Supreme Court of Canada ruled in an 8-to-1 ruling that Trinity Western students had the right to abide by a Christian code of conduct. In that case, it was the BC College of Teachers who were illegally picking on Christians. You'd think the senior lawyers who run the Nova Scotia Barrister Society would have known about that court ruling and obeyed it, but they gave in to their own anti-Christian bigotry. They put their own political beliefs above the religious freedom of their fellow Canadians. They clearly want to drive Christians out of the public square. But this battle is surely not over yet. Ontario's Law Society has also voted to ban Christian lawyers from Trinity Western. And as John and I have talked about on the show before, BC is backtracking. They originally made the right decision, but then they caved in to anti-Christian lobby groups. And remember, these enemies of Trinity Western are lawyers. They will surely appeal this Nova Scotia decision to the higher court. We may have won this battle, but the war is far from over. But today is a day for celebrating the fact that we still have principled men and women like the pro-freedom lawyers who took this case on in Nova Scotia, like the judge, Justice Jamie Campbell. And it's a day for celebrating the fact that we live in a free country whose Charter of Rights and Freedoms begins with the preamble, and I quote, "Whereas Canada is founded upon principles that recognize the supremacy of God and the rule of law." I'm celebrating in one tangible way. I am chipping in another $100 to John Carpe's legal fund at the crowdfunding website we set up called therealbigots.com. John helped win this fight in Nova Scotia, and he's going to help sue for freedom in other provinces too. That's what we're going to put our dough towards. You know, there's a lot of bad news in the world when it comes to anti-Christian bigotry, but on days like today, I feel just a little bit of hope. Stick around. After the break, we'll talk to John himself about this win and what it will mean for other provinces where he's fighting the same fight, including BC. More Source still ahead. So now you know the good news. Trinity Western University won their court challenge against the Nova Scotia Barrister Society, but the fight is not over yet. The Law Society in Ontario also voted against Trinity Western, and British Columbia is backtracking too. Well, freedom fighter and lawyer John Carpe joins us from Calgary to update us on this case. John, welcome to the show. And first of all, congratulations and thank you. You were one of the lawyers in Nova Scotia. You were an intervener on behalf of the Justice Centre for Constitutional Freedoms. You were arguing for freedom of religion and freedom of association, and you won.
I was really happy with the outcome. It was a great day for freedom in Canada, and it's a very good precedent that's going to be persuasive with the other court actions in Ontario and BC.
And you are an intervener in the Ontario case too, am I right? When is that expected? When is that court case hasn't been heard yet? When do you expect to be in court fighting this fight in Ontario?
In the month of June, so coming up in about 5 months.
Okay, that's not too far away. And BC, tell me what's up there. Last time we spoke, Trinity Western hadn't really got going there. Has Trinity Western filed lawsuit there too?
Absolutely, they did in December, shortly before Christmas. Trinity Western University filed a court action against the Law Society of BC, and the Justice Centre is going to make an application to try and become an intervener in that case as well and argue for freedom of association. I
tell you, it's like whack-a-mole, all these provinces popping up, and you have to hit them back down. And the thing is, it's not even done because absolutely for sure the anti-Christian extremists in Nova Scotia will appeal. I mean, it's just so obvious to me. These folks will not stop until they've exhausted every opportunity. Is that your sense as well? I mean, these guys are relentless on the other side, aren't they?
I'd be very surprised if the Nova Scotia Barrister Society did not appeal its loss. I have no idea what they're going to do, but my guess would be that they're going to try and take it to the Nova Scotia Court of Appeal.
I want to ask you, a ruling in Nova Scotia, that's not binding on Ontario or BC judges, but it's what we call persuasive. Is that the right legal phrase?
Perfect legal phrase. Yeah, it's persuasive authority. Courts do take it very seriously. If another province has ruled on the same issue or a very similar issue, courts look at that very seriously, and it's very influential. But strictly speaking, they're not required to follow it.
Yeah. Well, they are required to follow the Supreme Court of Canada case, which in 2001 was 8-1 for Trinity Western. This seems like a cookie-cutter repeat of that. Now, John, I want to thank you. You are a freedom fighter. That is, you don't just talk about things; you go and try and get them done. And you did it. And our viewers helped you. We've raised money for your efforts before, and we told you last time we met that we were going to raise dough for you for your BC intervention. We have already raised $6,100, and I would like our viewers to consider celebrating your victory in a meaningful way by chipping in to your BC intervention fund by going to therealbigots.com. I say therealbigots.com because in my view, the real bigots are those who want to drive Christians out of the public square. John, I am pleased to have put in $100 yesterday as a form of celebration of your win, and I want to encourage our viewers to do that. Tell me what you'll do with the $10,000 that we're going to raise for you. We only have 30 seconds left. How will that help you fight the fight for freedom of religion and freedom of association?
Well, we rely entirely on voluntary donations from people. We don't ask for or receive any government funding. And these court actions take money. We do it on the cheap in the sense that we have in-house staff. So it's actually very cost effective, because if you're retaining a law firm, you're paying $300, $500, $700 an hour for lawyers, whereas what we do is we have the in-house staff who are on salary, and so we get very good results, but you get a lot more bang for the buck through a nonprofit that way with the in-house staff.
Isn't that great? Well, we will be with you. We have been with you because you know what, John? You're with us, and you're doing this for all Canadians. Good luck, my friend. Nice to see you. Take a victory lap. You deserve it, and so does everyone who believes in freedom. More.